Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We're glad you're back for another episode of the podcast. And we're going to start the podcast with a shout out to two places that we are really glad are listening to us so widely. Allison has the first one. We're splitting it this time.
Yeah.
Allison is going to do the country around the world.
Yeah, too nervous to do the whole thing though. Okay. All right. So the country that's in one of the top spots this week is Germany, specifically Baden-Württemberg, and I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that correctly, but hi.
Well, you're saying it much more close to correct than I would. So,
yes.
So well done, Allison. And we're very sorry if we've mispronounced where you're from in Germany.
And thank you to Germany.
Yes, we're super glad. We're super glad you're here. Tell everybody. Yeah. And in the United States, for the first time in our top ratings, Alabama. So welcome, people of Alabama. We're glad that you're here. Tell your friends and neighbors to come listen to this podcast because they will get episodes like this one where we're going to ask you to go into your classroom libraries and really look at the books that you have there, particularly the older ones. A surprising thing happened this week. I was online. I saw a meme of a well-known children's book, one that I'm sure I read to my children when they were young and read to many other people's children for years and years. Well-known book. And as I was looking at it, I went, oh no, because it says things like, I was sad, but I was brave, so I didn't cry. And I was like, oh no, not this book. I love this book.
But
I know.
Well, I think you could still read the book, but I think you just need to kind of
you have to change it.
Page, you know what I mean? Like if you like that book or, because.
But if the full lesson of the book is, I was brave, so I didn't express my emotions.
Yeah,
that's
then
good.
Throw it out. Like gone.
If I recall correctly, and now I'm going off the top of my head, but it doesn't just talk about being sad, it also talks about being angry and other things and but it also right, but it doesn't give the good messages about what to do with those feelings. No. So I was really sad about it because again, it's a book that I saw it and I went, oh, and I have such nice memories of reading it to my children until I looked at that and went, oh my goodness, what does this thing say? And I think we get like that, right? There's a book that we liked in our childhood, or there's a book that we read to our own children, or we've been reading for so long to early learners that we're not even really listening and processing the content anymore. We're just reading it. Mm-hmm. And they send messages to children about things like emotions. Mm-hmm. And the messages are those that we know we shouldn't be giving them. Our books about emotions should talk about it being okay to be sad and angry. And here's what we can do with those feelings. And that advice should not be take them and stuff them inside. It should not be, the definition of bravery is accepting your feelings, not hiding your feelings. So when we say to children, but I was brave and I didn't cry. Oh, that's not a great message.
You're teaching them the wrong definition of what it means to be brave. To me, being brave is like having all those emotions and overcoming and dealing and accepting them in a meaningful way so that I can still live and go on, you know what I mean? And process things like not, okay, so if I shove all my feelings inside, I'm a brave person. No, like to me, that's the opposite of being brave.
It's the opposite of good advice. Yeah, it's the opposite of good advice. And you know what? I'm not a big, generally speaking, I'm not a big, what's the word? Censor of books. Like there are the early childhood environmental rating scales, Eckers, otherwise known as Eckers, does not like certain books because they have some form of violence or aggression. And some of those books, I'm just like, oh, really? It's not. One of the books that I love that they don't like, that I'm always like rolling my eyes that they don't like it, is The Gingerbread Man. And they don't like it because he gets eaten. They don't like it because he gets eaten at the end.
But I'll tell you, like, the kids love The Gingerbread Man.
I love that book. I mean, there are books like that where I look at it and go, oh.
It's also in some of these bigger curriculums as one of the books.
Yes,
so
it is.
You have Eckers, and then you have your curriculum saying, okay, we should read this book. And then you're like, wait, what do I do?
Yes, because, people who write these curriculums would tell you that they feel that the book has important value and opens up important conversations with children. And I tend to agree with that in most cases.
Yeah.
However, when I open up a book and it says something like, I was brave, so I didn't cry.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that, because now we're talking about the mental health well-being of children. Yeah. I know people may disagree with me. People may say, Cindy, that other book, The Gingerbread Man, that shouldn't be read to children. You may disagree with me. And there's a variety of opinions. I tend to lean toward, go ahead and read it to them. But now I realize I have to look and think more closely.
I also feel like if you're a teacher that doesn't agree with The Gingerbread Man, then by all means, don't read The Gingerbread Man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You're right.
You do what you need to do to feel good at the end of the day. And if reading The Gingerbread Man gives you some sort of like, I don't know, if you're doubting it, then just like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And that's okay too. There's a lot of the books that I do do not do, and
right.
that's because I agree or I disagree, or I can spin it my way, and or I know the kids in my class are going to love it or hate it, like you just know. So you just
read Pete the Cat instead. Read Pete the Cat instead if you don't like. Me too. It's like a favorite, and it's a favorite of mine that came out after my children's time, so I didn't get to enjoy it in that way. It's fairly recent, but I love it. I absolutely love it, and the children love it. So it's not like we can't take an older book, and say, well, the children love it, so I'm going to read it. No, the children are going to love other books too. I think we have to look at it and think, what lesson is coming across to the children? I think children know that gingerbread men get eaten. I don't think that's a surprise. Yeah. So that's a whole, I don't know. I'm just falling on that side of that whole thing. Yeah. But again, people could disagree. What I want people to do is go back, look at your books, think about the plot, the characters and their feelings, and is the verbiage and the plot sending children the right messages that will enable them to have good mental health. I would guess that a whole bunch of the older books do not, because they were written by a generation of people who thought children should stop crying or we'll give them something to cry about. Yes. That's the generation that wrote those books. Yes. Or, even the generation before who thought children should be seen and not heard. Yes. So these generations wrote those books. We now know that those are damaging messages to young children. And it's not all that different than what we have talked about in the past, making sure your books don't have racial undertones. Very important. No racism in your books. Yes. No.
Plenty of those older books that have that.
Dare I mention Seuss? Seuss? Yeah.
Okay. So, because I think when it comes to things like Dr. Seuss, it's not necessarily the words. You got to look at those illustrations, because some of those illustrations are very much.
They're terrible.
So
they're not good. They're not good. Again, go get Pete the Cat. Go get Pete the Cat. Highly recommend.
We dedicate an entire week to Dr. Seuss, and
a lot of places don't do that anymore. A lot of them
to do it. So I will celebrate reading.
A lot of places just do what you're saying and celebrate reading. They have a week of celebrating reading with children. They have a book week, generally speaking. Yeah. I work with one program who does a whole readathon with the children, but they have taken the focus away from the more offensive stuff. But not everyone. There are still some programs doing it and hanging on to it for dear life. I would guess that if the sort of illustrations that you're talking about, not just in those books, but others, the sort of illustrations that you're talking about, if they were on a standalone poster, you would never put that in your classroom. Exactly. So why are you continuing to read this stuff? Just out of nostalgia. And I'm sorry, but that's not a good enough reason. Yeah. we also have to be careful about, and I don't think this is a real word that I'm about to use, but I'm going to use it anyway. I sometimes make up words. People who know me, Allison's laughing, because people who know me know I sometimes make nouns out of verbs and verbs out of nouns and make up words because it fits. Yeah. So I think you have to be very, very careful about religious majorityism. And I don't think majorityism is a word, but it says what I want to say.
Yes. Do
the books that you have focus on only what seems to be a majority religion, or are they askew? Like I've got 10 books related to this majority faith-based belief and half a book about somebody else's.
Yeah.
You have to take a look and make sure that there's balance, because all children need to feel that they belong. So you should look for messages about emotions, racial undertones, bias related to religion.
I think also the family unit needs to be looked at in some of these books, because some of those older books, they have that, it's almost like a sexism kind of feel to it, because it's like an old definition of what the family unit is and what it should be, and very stereotypical. Not that does, but there's so many.
But also the roles. The roles. Okay, so
kind of go into it, and you see like pictures of like the mother doing all the housework, and the father
the woman wearing a dress and heels while she's cooking and cleaning. All that is, let's just say, outdated. Yeah. So you're right. There could be.
There's also different types of families that need to be included in your program. So like. So you got to add that into your library and eliminate all those other ones that do the stereotypical gender divide kind of thing.
I can think of books where, the man is coming home to the woman and the children, and the woman is in the dress wearing pearls while setting the table, and the man comes home with his hat and his suit and his briefcase. I know it probably still happens in many families. The imaging is very pre-women's movement. I don't know how to put it.
As people who just watch Mrs. America, yes, I think that's before the women's movement.
If you open a book and the illustrations yell 1950s to you, think twice. There's probably messaging in that children would pick up on, and it wasn't intended at the time. That was life at the time, but life has changed. Roles have changed. Our belief in women to be equal partners in any sort of relationship, no matter the gender of the partners, has changed. So we want to represent all families, and we want books that don't lean back on 1950s stereotypes. Much as you may love them and had them read to you as children.
Yeah. Again, they were read to us as children, and I don't know, I think a lot of us are in therapy, let's do better with this generation. Let's try at least.
I was recently watching with my husband old episodes of a TV show that was on when we were young. My sister is also binge watching it at the same time that we are. And the name of the series is called Family Affair. It's really a very, it's all about love, and it's a very heartwarming, the children are very cute on it. And it was groundbreaking in its time. Do you know the story of it, Allison?
No.
The background?
I never heard of it. Yeah.
So Family Affair, for anyone who may be familiar with this, it may ring a bell. The little girl's doll in Family Affair was Mrs. Beasley. People have sometimes heard of Mrs. Beasley. So the basic premise of this series is that there are 3 children, a set of boy-girl twins, and an older teenage sibling whose parents died, and they had been farmed out to different relatives, and those relatives no longer wanted the children, and they brought them to their Uncle Bill, who is just phenomenally played by Brian Keith in this series. They brought them to the single, the bachelor, sort of playboy, professional, always traveling for business, Uncle Bill.
Okay.
And Uncle Bill takes them in. He and his, he calls him a gentleman's gentleman. He and his manservant basically take in these children and raise them. But it's this, to watch the series, you have to try and catch it, Allison.
Yeah.
There are episodes you can see for free on like Tubi and stuff.
Okay.
So it's, when you watch it, it's just all full of love. And I sit there saying, oh my God, I love Uncle Bill. He's so compassionate with these children. And he doesn't believe in, he believes in teaching them, not punishing them. And Uncle Bill was just ahead of his time. Again, brilliantly played by Brian Keith, who in real life, this was an actor who in real life had ended up with like 7 children of his own. He loved children. And you can just see it in this series, how much he loves these children. And the children are adorable. They say things and do things that are so outdated that I don't think I would, I don't think that I would watch it with a child.
Yeah.
I think that would be a mistake because it's so dated in some ways.
Yeah.
So in some ways it was way ahead. In some ways it was very dated. And my husband and I were watching Family Affair, and there were some things that they say that we were cracking up. Even him as sort of like this playboy bachelor, and so, and it's an example of, we love this series and we're really enjoying going back to our childhoods and binge watching it. And I would not watch it with young children.
Yeah.
So it can be the same for old TV shows.
Yeah.
These things that come from a different era. Family Affair was from, I'm going to date myself now. Family Affair was from the 1960s. I was super, super young when it came out. That said, my sister had a Mrs. Beasley doll that I was very jealous of. But they say things that my husband and I were just cracking up. And I can't think of a particular instance now. And then they'll sometimes say things where we go, oh, you can't say that now. You can't do that now.
Yeah.
Ooh, like, ouch, I can't believe we actually spoke that way. And we did. And I think when you visit back, and if you were to look at your books and visit back, and look at them through the lens of somebody in 2023 who wants the children to all feel like they belong and they're safe and their emotions are normal, and you look at it through that lens instead of the nostalgia lens, you're going to discover that you need new books. That's what I think.
I think what you're saying is like, if you have nostalgia for that book, it's okay for you as an adult to enjoy that book still, but just don't share it with children.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would avoid sharing. Take the book home if you'd like and keep it as a keepsake. So on Family Affair, one of the things that the children were in, I think it was first grade, and they were in lower first grade, and then they did well, so they got moved into upper first grade, which was a big deal on this episode of the series. And they gave them new readers, and they opened them up, and one of the children says to the other one, "Where's Dick and Jane?" And I was cracking up because I grew up on Dick and Jane. Where's Dick and Jane? Right? And the other child says, "Oh, who cares? All they ever did was run and see Spot." Because it was see Jane, see Dick, see Jane run, see Dick run. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's sort of like that. We open up and go, oh, where's all this stuff? Oh, who cares? They thought this or they said this, and it wasn't stimulating, and it wasn't relevant, and it wasn't, so it's kind of like that. And so if people in a 1960s TV show, if these young children can open up a book and say, well, what happened to this? And the other child says, who cares? I think we can do that.
Yeah.
In 2023.
Yeah.
I feel like we can do it.
Yeah.
I hope you'll go back with that lens, folks. I hope you will go back and think, okay, what in here is somehow damaging to the mental health or self-esteem of very young children? Because as much as I may love it and have great memories of it, we have to be careful. I know we've talked about books before on the podcast, but I'm not so sure that we had such concrete examples like this one that said, I was brave, so I didn't cry.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
No, that's not bravery.
No. And I feel like then, because as a person who does cry quite often, I would feel like, wait, but I still do brave things. You know what I mean? Like,
it's actually okay to cry. That's pretty brave too.
Yeah,
it's brave to accept your feelings.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
That's brave.
Yeah.
You know, when a child comes to you because they're sad and they just want you to hold them and they're willing to ask for that help, that's brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, they would just sit and hide in a corner or go under the table because they're scared.
They're scared.
Takes bravery to come to you with their arms wide open and accept the comfort from you. And I think that's what they need to know. And if you can find books that tell the children, you know, the child was brave, so he went to his teacher to get a hug.
Yeah.
That would be, maybe we should write that book, Alison.
Write it. Yeah.
Maybe we should write that book.
Yeah.
That this is what bravery looks. Oh my gosh. Everybody's going to take my idea now. I have to stop talking. Know when to stop talking. This is the time. So we shouted out locations already at the beginning of this podcast. So right now we're going to ask you to please go find our stuff on the internet, our Facebook page, our website, our Patreon, all of which is under the name How Preschool Teachers Do It.
Yeah.
And I say that so often that when people ask the title of my book, I have to pause and think because that title just comes rolling out of my mouth. How Preschool Teachers Do It.
Yeah.
So please go and look and like us on Facebook, check out our website and contact us, check out our Patreon, where I have to tell you, people for just $5 a month are enjoying extra content. So you feel free to go on there and join them. It was interesting. Patreon had a thing where you could recommend a tier and their automatic recommendation was higher than the $5 a month. And I manually changed it because we don't want people to spend more money than they can or have.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But anything that you can do to continue to support the inflation behind this work is greatly appreciated. And we will catch you next time on the podcast, after which we hope you find books. If you find some books where you think, oh, I didn't realize, send us the names. You never know if we'll say it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. We will see you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.